collapse. And it was successful under a program headed by Leo E. Wanta. But Leo Wanta was not the only one doing it. It was much more to it. It was a lot of people doing it. But he successfully brought the Soviet economy to its knees, and it crashed. And that's what happened. It wasn't Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. They didn't have anything to do with it. It crashed the whole world economy because they siphoned out, on the record, they siphoned out $27 trillion. But it's probably more than that, because all of that money was pulled off the record, out of the banks, out of the countries. And it's off the record today. It's not on anybody's books today. $27 trillion disappeared from international banking. So that's what Interpol is in the United States looking for. They're looking for what's left of the $27 trillion to give it back to foreign countries. And Obama was he was either agreeable to that or they forced him, one or the other. But it was a dramatic thing that occurred to make him issue an executive order to allow Interpol in with unlimited legal backing.
And that's the reason why they came in, Griff?
Yeah, that's right.
Was
they
because
came
of
to
the
Richmond,
Wanta?
Virginia to go after Bank of America first, because that's where $4.5 trillion was recently stolen and switched up to J.P. Morgan, and it was dispersed off the books, off the record.
It's amazing to think that $27 trillion actually exists.
Yes, it's somewhere, and Leo Wanta knows where it is. Leo worked for the CIA. He was working directly for Reagan. There were others. I am oversimplifying it just to get it across, but there were others, and these were good guys. These were not thieves at all. They were good guys, and they tried to get a lot of that money back into the U.S. Treasury, and they were stopped by the American government, who didn't want it back into the systems. In 2007, Wanta went into federal court and said in those documents that I posted on my website, he said, if this money is not put back in, my paraphrasing, the world monetary will collapse. And it did, and they wouldn't let it back in. Now, there are more efforts by Wanta right today with this money, and it's the press will not touch it.
That's interesting to say the least. I just again, it's unfathomable to me to think that $27 million can just, or $27 trillion can just up and disappear like that, But of course, we've seen it with this last bailout, where they say it's 787 billion times, but people don't realize that it's a revolving account. That when it was all said and done, you're talking trillions of dollars that the Fed actually stole from the taxpayers in order for this bailout to go, and it really didn't do anything for it except to extend the pain.
And
that's all it did.
They knew it. They lied to the American people again. Just like BP has been lying. Every time these people open their mouth, some disingenuous comes out.
Do you think
they're consistent?
Do you think, Griff, that people will ever wake up? That there'll be some sort of conscious awakening?
A few people will. The majority will never. They can't understand the three men going in a hotel and what happened to the $1. How could they possibly understand $27 trillion?
It's really a shame. It is really an absolute shame that we, as one of the most, I mean, really, if you think about it, the United States was formed as the bastion of freedom, and people have lost that knowledge and ability of, or the definition. They don't know the definition of what it truly means to be free, and they think that being free means that when you lose your job, you got a safety net in place to prop you back up when you lose your job, or if you become disabled for any reason, that you've got that safety net in place to take care of you when you go down. We've become a society based on entitlements, and unfortunately, these entitlements cannot sustain. We can't sustain these levels of entitlements And we're rapidly approaching the point where the Ponzi scheme or the Great Pyramid scheme that we have in place that's known as Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid they're going to come crashing down. And when that happens, you're going to have millions of people that are going to be thinking about, well, how am I going to feed my kids today? And when that happens, I got news for you, folks. That's going to be quite a person to come up against if you have to do that. So
it's even more complicated than that, because you need the money to buy the food, but you have to have the food. After the fall of the southern states in 1865, there was very little food. If you had 500 Confederate dollars, you couldn't buy a loaf of bread because probably you couldn't find the bread. And that's what's coming at us also. We don't manufacture anything anymore, so we depend on foreign governments to bring it to us on their ships. Well, if we don't have any money, we can't buy it. But they have the same problem we do, you see. Their money is collapsing also. The whole world is in financial dire straits right now. So our food is going to be impacted. We won't be able to get the food, certainly not enough to feed all of the people. How are you going to feed 30 million people that are coming north? You can't. The government can't feed them. There's no money. There's no food. So it's like dominoes going over in every direction, and that's what I see coming. I hope we are able to get our military back into this country after the dollar collapses. How are we going to buy fuel for the airplanes? I mean, really, the Pentagon in the press today is running out of money in its bank accounts. States, 30-some states are in terrible trouble. Illinois has stopped paying its bills. California is sinking. There is no mechanism to bring these states back. There is no magic solution. All of the money has been printed by Obama that destroyed the value on the world markets. See, he destroyed the value of the dollar on the world markets. But on a local, even if Obama printed more money through the Fed and gave it to the states, he can't do that very much longer. We've run out of rope. So how are you going to pull the states back when they're collapsing? You can't. You can't. There is no mechanism left.
I believe, Griff, that this country was built on the blood and sweat of fine, brave men and women down through history, because they came here from foreign lands and all over the world with the belief that if I worked hard, I could make something of myself, I could be successful, and we built a nation. And granted, the nation got a big boost up through slavery, not limited to slavery of blacks, but also the slavery of American Indian, as well as the slavery of China and the white slave trade. Most people don't realize that, yes, there were white slaves in this country just as well. But now we don't have that belief that if I go out and I get my fingernails dirty and I come home stinking of sweat that I put in an honest day's work for my wages, that I'm going to make something of myself. Nowadays what we have is, well, I'll wait until later and the government will send me a check. The government can't keep sending you a check because they can't keep printing up all of that money. There comes a point, a tipping point, where the people that are loaning them that money say, no more, we're not going to loan you anymore. And I believe that we're coming to that point very quickly.
The money is not money. It is a promissory note from a private company called the Federal Reserve. It's a promissory note. It says so right on the front. It's not money. It's not money. In constitutional early documents, money is defined as gold and silver. It's still defined as gold and silver. They haven't changed that, but they ignore it. I don't think slavery had anything to do with anything. The only thing that has to do with slavery is the perpetual victims that hang on to that to extort money out of organizations and people. That's what I really believe.
I can I certainly do agree with you there, Griff. And now you've heard that the water down in the Gulf is toxic. I've heard of reports